We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. Hey guys, before we begin today's episode, let's hear from this week's sponsor, CareCloud. As a physician, you routinely check your patient's health, but when was the last time you checked the financial health of your practice? You could be needlessly losing money right now, so stop bleeding money. Get actionable insights about your group's financial performance with a free, no strings attached assessment from CareCloud, a leader in medical billing solutions, electronic health records, and more. CareCloud has over 20 years of experience helping large and small providers boost profitability and has helped thousands of practices optimize their financial operations. Request your free revenue cycle assessment and learn more about your group's performance by visiting drpodcastnetwork.com/CareCloud. That's drpodcastnetwork.com/CareCloud. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to this week's podcast of the Financial Freedom for Physicians. And as we stated, we have 4 types of freedom that we promote here: time, location, financial freedom, and emotional freedom that encompasses health. So today we have a very special guest on our show. His name is Dr. Colin Zhu. And before I read his bio for you, he's extremely experienced and expert as a chef, as how food affects your body, immunity, and he has a really innovative summit coming out in the next few weeks. So he's also written a book as well. So without ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Colin Zhu. Is a board certified in family practice and OMT and lifestyle medicine. Passionate about the intersection of medicine, food, and nutrition, Dr. Zhu trained as a chef and health coach at the Natural Gourmet Institute for Health and Culinary Arts and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition following completion of his medical degree. To share his unique blend of unique knowledge, medical, with a wider audience, Dr. Zhu launched the Chef Doc, an website, an online wellness and lifestyle education platform, which has been featured in several publications. Dr. Zhu is an international speaker, author of the book Thrive Medicine: How to Cultivate Your Desires and Elevate Your Life, and is also the podcast host of Thrive Bites, in which he interviews the latest health and wellness experts about incorporating a plant-powered lifestyle, enhancing emotional wellness, and creating a thriving mindset, which we really need in these days. His latest venture is his signature event for 2021 and is the first virtual summit experience called the Thrive Formula, where he combines inspiration, education, and practical tools on how to thrive. So today you're going to hear about all of the amazing work that Dr. Zhu is doing. And so without ado, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. When I listen back to, that intro, I'm just like, who is that guy? Sometimes, when you do so much, you just don't remember what you did. And that kind of takes the fun out of it, right? You have to be able to relish at times. I'm sure you have a lot of guests that are very high performing achievers. And sometimes it's good to kind of savor what you've done. So, Chris, thank you so much. Dr. Liu, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate, you doing this and elevating your platform and sharing with the masses. So it's a privilege to be here.
Absolutely. I think in these times and age, a lot of physicians need to hear our messages. And so just to bring on experts and people outside of your expertise and niche. So this was much needed. So tell us about your journey. I'm really that's what I know. The first question I ask is I always want to know how you got to where you want to be. The journey is always the most interesting part.
It is. It is. So I usually start off this question with, talking about my mother, and I can't really start without moms, right? So,
Uh,
I grew up. So I'm Chinese in heritage. My mom is a Chinese medical doctor, and I'm born to immigrant parents, originally from New Jersey and based in LA. And I, say reference her because she's really the one that kind of taught me about compassion, empathy, and looking at people in a very holistic manner. And when I went into medical school, I wanted to blend Western and Eastern philosophies. And unbeknownst to me, in your school, that's where you need to be educated. When I followed a lot of my mentors and predecessors slash lifestyle related curricula, the most recent survey says that only about 25% is actually required. Personally speaking, I only received 10 credit hours, and it was mainly in the form of biochemistry, right? And so I felt like there is something I could go deeper with this, right? So after I graduated from medical school, um, I dove deeper and I wanted to learn not just about nutrition. Wanted to learn more about food, where it came from, how it's sourced, how's it grown, how to mix flavors together, and how ultimately all those different things affected our health and well-being. And so I enrolled myself into culinary school. And then I got certified in health coaching because the styles of how a patient and a doctor and a patient's relationship is very different than a coach versus a client. So I needed to understand that type of counseling and coaching style. And so after I graduated from my residency practice in family practice, I basically used it because people like to ask me, why did I go to school? So, to culinary school, was it just a hobby? I was like, no, I really wanted to enhance what, I've been taught. And I used it to publicly speak, hold demos and hold workshops. Nowadays, during the pandemic, it's more with food demos and things like that. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell.
that's an amazing story. And what's interesting is the whole osteopathic allopathic medical model. Um, we were trained in a certain way: diagnosis, treatment, um, medication, tests, imaging. Uh, but what's interesting is that rarely do you have docs such as yourself go outside into other fields, such as culinary school, and to learn the relationship between diet. We know the diet is affecting our health, but you know we know that our food is sourced, is controlled by food companies, so they
Yeah.
have their motives.
Yep.
So so I find it very fascinating. So um and so it's very interesting because what were some of the revelations that as going through chef school, and how in terms of the distribution, the sourcing of food, what did you find, anything what that was shocking to you?
So there's this quote. I don't have the original author off the top of my head, but there's a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase, where the food system, creates foods and products without the regard to your health, and the health system dispenses services and therapeutics without regards to food. And so, there's that kind of encapsulates, a lot. If you look at our top 10 causes of, death, diseases, disability, diet is like at top, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and what's interesting about diet is that, unlike smoking and alcohol, which we know that it's bad for our health and we could live without it, we can't live without food. What I'm saying? So it comes into, how what do we need to understand about food? How does that affect every organ system? How does that affect my mood? How does it affect my immune system, gut health? Those are more things that we talk about now. And it's just a larger amount of layers to food. There's the emotional aspect, there's the culture aspect, it's very political, right? So I went into school, I went to a school. What was unique about my schooling experience was it was one of the very first schools that was health supportive, and it was one of the very first schools that was plant based. A lot of culinary schools are actually grounded in the French technique, right? Nothing wrong with that. Except the techniques really emphasize using a lot, learning how to use fat and salt and butter, and just making food
Hmm.
taste good, right? So
Hmm.
without the actual intention of how's this going to affect our health in the long term. And so I made it a pointed decision to seek a school like that, and so that's how I ended up into school. And honestly, Chris, it was one of the best experiences of my life. It was a very great, grand, experience that I would never forget. And it's in Manhattan. It was in Manhattan. It's since got acquired by the Institute for Culinary Education, so it's no longer there. But it was a very small, two-level kitchen and school. There was like three kitchens in general, and it was just hustle and bustle. As you can imagine, behind the scenes, in a busy restaurant or commercial kitchen, it was a lot of hustle and bustle. It was just a lot of fun. Doctors were used to writing with our prescription pad. We're used to, doing surgeries and procedures. But it's very different where you're using all these other senses, your smell, your hearing, your touch, everything you're utilizing, and it forces you to be present. And that's what I really loved about it, in addition to eating amazing food, what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
awesome. And yeah, that's one. It's so interesting that you incorporated this. And then you went to practice medicine, and then you took a leap of faith, and you were doing your locums work, and then you were
yep.
also, and then finally, I think 2020, that was a lot of physicians made a lot of change. You took a leap of faith, and now tell us about your now you so you had emotional freedom, and you also had health freedom, and now you're
Mhm,
creating financial freedom. So
mhm,
tell
mhm.
us about that story in terms of the traditional healthcare model, and how you how do you see your skills and experience fitting in, and also how you're impacting your audience in the world.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, there was a lot in that question. So basically, when you a lot of so I my path through medicine was very non-traditional, so like you said, you alluded to me doing locum. So after I graduated, I went straight into locum tenens work. And so for those that are not familiar, it's kind of like being a substitute teacher, for doctors, right? And so I used that because when I came out, it wasn't that attractive for me to sign a very long-term contract to a hospital system or group practice, right? But that's
Yeah.
all we know. It
Right.
wasn't
Right.
until maybe my second year, towards the second year of residency, where I was introduced to a professor that did a couple years of locum work before she created her own practice, her private practice in New York. And she described it to me, and I was like, oh, I didn't know what this was. Similarly, I didn't go into this, but I didn't know what osteopathy was before I founded, a DO school, and ultimately, delve into it. So I was like, what is locums work? And long story short, I just went into it. I needed to know what kind of physician I needed to be to practice. And so, so I used that, and I practiced in 4 different states, and varying different types of practice settings. So I went to, my first experience was in North Vegas in a Indian health reservation. So learning about Indian health, tribal facilities. I went to the VA in New Orleans. So I,
Mm.
learned and dealt with a lot of veterans, predominantly in the substance abuse, drug abuse, mental health arena. And then I went to Seattle and got more immersed into community health. And it's very diverse populations there, from people from West and Eastern Africa and Southeast Asia and things like that. And then ultimately I landed in California, where I started serving underserved, Latino communities, and then ultimately ended up in Los Angeles. And so those experiences really helped guided me on a personal level and also on a professional level. And then over time, I started the platform, the Chef Doc, because I needed an outlet initially and passion to be able to funnel my creativity, number one. But number two, more importantly, was I practice mostly outpatient medicine. I'm not really a fan of the hospital. And I needed a way to be able to educate and teach more effectively than one-on-one counseling. And so I said to myself, what can I do? So I created this platform to be able to reach as many people that I normally wouldn't cross paths otherwise. And so the Chef Doc is basically a wellness and lifestyle platform where it just introduces a lot of different kinds of resources, right?
Yeah.
And then over time, I've written a book about thriving, essentially. So combining my personal and professional experiences in terms of, learning how to thrive and my experiences with thriving, because, like you've been saying, Chris, I want to do my best to lead by example. I want to do my best to role model. I can't practice it, I can't preach it if I can't practice it myself. And so I wrote a book about it. It's very action oriented. And then that was in 2017. And then in 2019 is when I, launched Thrive Bites, which is a podcast. And I interview, amazing people, amazing, passionate people. Yeah, so that brought me, into the pandemic, and, I just pivoted and did something new,
Yeah.
something else new.
Yeah, that's awesome, because a lot of physicians, the pandemic was their breaking point, and a lot of creativity came out of the pandemic, especially in terms of the online, the social media, people creating summits, and just a whole host of new business revenue models for physicians. So
Right.
and you did that. And then what's interesting is that you took your really your experience and you leverage that into a platform so that you can, so I we talk about one-on-one physician helping patients or coaching, but what your platform does is it can reach thousands,
Yeah.
millions,
Yeah.
so you've written books, which I'll put the link in, so it's called Thrive, so be sure to check that out. And you should also pay attention to Dr. Zhu's mindset. So really, it's just a holistic, integrative approach, and sort of combining your personal life journey into impacting others. So
Yeah.
you can, yeah, and you can also check out his podcast as well that he mentioned, and then also which is really fascinating because I interview a lot of doctors that did a lot of summits,
Mhm.
which it's a different skill. You have to bring in experts from so many different. So tell us about that journey, and tell us, feel free to promote it, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so
Yeah, so thank you for that. And I love the fact that you were able to observe how, leveraging, my podcasting experience, especially my podcasting experience, because um, I mean, Chris, I don't know about you, but you don't go into medicine thinking that you're going to do all these different other things, right?
yeah,
And so, like, like writing a book, I had no idea I was going to write a book. I failed every like reading a literature class in junior high,
yeah,
and podcasting, podcasting was more because I really thrive personally. I really flourish on having, awesome, impactful, purposeful conversations. And so I wanted to share that with the masses. And, I didn't know that I was going to reach 100 countries. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
it's amazing what the power of the internet and social, the positive aspects can do. But more importantly, what I want to emphasize is the art of medicine, because we emphasize so much on the science of medicine, and that's
Mhm.
important. But it's very few instances where doctors and physicians can exercise that right part of their brain, their creativity. So the summit, yes, thank you. So the summit was really birthed during last summer, towards the end of last summer, early fall, where I needed to do more. People are hurting, people are suffering. We're in this common thread of humanity where, we all share something essentially, right? It's
Yeah,
like, besides knowing that we're all human and, we're all, really the same underneath, it doesn't matter what creed, color, belief, value system we are. we're still, humanity at the end of the book. How can I do more? How can I impact more? How can I inspire more? So I decided to create my own, virtual summit. It's more than a summit, actually. It's what I would like to describe it as is it's a thriving masterclass series. And what it is essentially is, there's more than 50 speakers gathered, and it's called the Thrive Formula. And Thrive is spelled THR with the number 5. And it's based off 5 pillars. Food is medicine. So reestablishing cooking as a way of life, and we're doing this from a whole foods plant-based approach. We talk about functional fitness, using practical fitness not to get to a ultra marathon or to compete in CrossFit. It's more so how can we weather day-to-day obstacles, so and maintain our physical bodies. We talk about relationships, so self-care, interpersonal relationships, a relationship with something bigger than ourselves. We teach about resilience. Chris, I know you talk a lot about financial resilience, but we talk about resilience in terms of emotional and mental fortitude and using that as a skill set. And then lastly but not least is community. How can I be of service? What does it mean to build a network and tribe? And what is our environmental impact as a human species? So I use those 5 pillars to, as foundations, as, toolkits, to go into the world and be able to thrive is my hope. So, but yeah, it's going to launch, May the 5th. And it's going to be catered towards, people who prioritize health and wellness. It's going to be catered towards healthcare professionals, especially physicians. There's going to be CME, with this. It's going to be catered towards students, pre-professional students, because I don't know about you, Chris, but I created the summit in the mindset that I wish I had something like this. You remember
Yeah.
how I said that we had a lack of, certain types of education? I
Yeah.
wish I had something like this when I was a student. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I created that in mind for the healthcare student as well. So it's going to be big, it's going to be massive, and yeah, just think of it as like a masterclass series. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And for the listeners on the show, I'll put the links to Dr. Zhu's summit. So really check it out. He has everything from what's really interesting. He has, experts from all different, those 5 pillars. But what really jumped out to me was that you had flexibility and movement, posture, alignment, energetic. And also you also have Olympic Taekwondo athlete. So really check it out. You're going to get a really whole integrative experience.
Yeah, definitely. We got chefs, dietitians,
Yeah.
coaches, so many different passionate people. And,
Yeah.
of course, including, Chris Liu here, himself. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, definitely check it out. And, feel free to ask me questions, what I'm saying? So I definitely, in a time like this, it's all about connections, right? It's all about, not just consuming content, but it's also about like, how do we bridge the gap and connect with our fellow man, on a personal and a professional manner.
Yeah. Yeah. The pandemic just, I think, for a lot of creatives, it brought out, the best in creativity and just people adjusting and weathering. So,
Yeah.
um, what's the best way for the audience to get in contact with you, and what's your final parting words?
Yeah, so I guess my 2 websites will probably be the best. You can find me on chef.zhu.com, CHEF DOCZHU.com, and then the summit's website is the Thrive Formula, so THR number 5.co. You'll be able to contact me through there. And yeah, my parting remarks would be, you know what, I don't want to make it a cliche that life is short, but the pandemic has really taught us that life is precious. And,
Mhm.
it, I want you guys to find what you love if you haven't already. Really, really, immerse yourself in it, and then ultimately share that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
I think that's your greatest gift is if you could share what you love, because, we all need each other at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. We our society is just so stressed and filled with the crisis news network and just negativity. So we need more inspiring positive messages we get out there, the better. So
Yes,
um
yes, 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 Chris.
yeah. So thank Dr. Zhu, thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll put all the show notes and all the links in the resources below, and we'll see you next time. So I hope you enjoyed this fantastic episode. But before we go, let's give another shout out to our sponsor, CareCloud. Don't let bad billing processes keep you from your hard-earned revenue. CareCloud's free revenue cycle assessment uncovers billing mistakes so you can see how to claim every last dollar. Get your free assessment by visiting drpodcastnetwork.com/CareCloud. Again, that's drpodcastnetwork.com/CareCloud. Don't wait. CareCloud is ready to help your practice thrive. We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show.